Good evening and welcome to the Badger Politic. I'm Scott Ferentz.
My name's Paul Sickle. Welcome back, Scott, from Middleton.
Yes, and welcome back to my voice. I think I'm actually pretty much recovered at this point, so I can give it my all in terms of the microphone. So.
Right. So we saw the Democratic Party of Wisconsin's convention in Middleton, Wisconsin.
We did. We were
Russ
there.
Feingold's hometown.
Yes, indeed. And we were there for the 2 days and talked to a number of people and saw some interesting results and got an idea of what maybe some of our future gubernatorial candidates might look like.
Yeah, some of them were there.
Mm-hmm.
Officially, none of the candidates were allowed to speak, but a couple of rumored candidates, since they weren't officially candidates, wound up speaking, so that was kind of cute.
Yeah.
You had a pretty close election for chair.
Yes.
And you had a massive crowd.
Yes.
That was the most impressive thing. I guess it was 2,300.
It was.
They estimate.
I haven't seen any final numbers because there was a walk-up crowd. Obviously, people that weren't registered before the day of. Mm-hmm. But I think the registered numbers, from what I had heard, is that last year it was around 1,100 something, 1,150 or something like that, and this year it was like double that.
Right.
So and that's huge, and that's talking about a presidential election year with the kind of race we had in 2016,
right?
Versus a year like this where there's really not anything going on,
except there was the party chairs race, which drew 1,389 votes, which is
delegates. Yeah,
and the delegate count, and that's much higher. That's more than it wasn't like 1,100 normally. Our delegates, it's like maybe 600 or 700.
Yeah,
I believe,
so that number definitely shot up.
Yeah, it was about double from what my recollection is. Like the more recent elections, especially like Tate's reelection and stuff like that.
So there was, for people that don't, aren't familiar with the kind of the inner workings of party politics. So there was the incumbent chair, Martha Lanning, who has been there 2 years.
So this is she's running for a second term.
Yes. So she was the incumbent, and there were 3 challengers for that position. And the primary challenger was Brian Kennedy, the mayor of Glendale, Wisconsin.
Yeah, right. She won. Martha wound up prevailing, 52 to 41%, which might not sound all that close, but for these kind of party chair, usually a fair amount of groupthink will develop in the room, and they tend not to be very close.
Yeah.
And so I think it spoke to wide sentiment for a need for change. Mm-hmm. By the same token, I think that Lanning's election in some ways stood for kind of an anti-Milwaukee, anti-Madison kind of feeling in the party. Okay. That was, I felt.
Where's Martha from?
Martha's from Sheboygan.
Right.
Her running mate was Bowen, so she had some David Bowen, from a state representative from the north side, also represents the parts of Shorewood and Glendale, all of Shorewood, I believe.
Milwaukee.
And right, so kind of the northeastern part of the metro area, including much of the city as well. Up by like Rufus King area and the points north of there. Mm-hmm. So Bowen, So Bowen, I think, had a lot of appeal, especially to like North Shore voters.
Yeah. So he was the vice chair running on the he's the incumbent vice chair under Martha Lanning.
Right. And Brian Kennedy is from Glendale, interestingly, also in the North Shore, but in the Milwaukee area. And this first vice chair candidate was Amanda Stuck, who represents Appleton in the state legislature, parts of the city of Appleton, which is pretty important because it's in the Fox Valley in the Northeast region where we have very few Democrats.
Critical area of the state to win.
Right. And then we had the last but not least was Mandela Barnes, who was really seen as kind of a driver in the campaign as well. And he's used to represent the north side of Milwaukee in the state legislature. He ousted an incumbent in kind of dramatic fashion in 2012. That's why I was attracted to his ticket.
Yeah.
And I ultimately voted for the BAM team, as it were, the team that came in second.
Yeah.
Barnes actually, incidentally, was elected.
Yes, because he was unopposed. For the second vice chair.
Right. But the rest of them weren't. Barnes, though, was clearly aligning himself with Brian Kennedy and Amanda Stuck, even though his election was guaranteed.
Yeah, it was the BAM ticket, as it was known at the convention. So, people were walking around with stickers for the BAM ticket, which was Brian, Amanda, and Mandela.
So I'll just give you my feelings.
Yeah,
I voted for. I was a delegate. You were not, Scott.
I was not. I was a guest. I was an observer.
And what's weird is that I think you're a more loyal Democrat than me. But there you go. Although I don't usually drift to the right, I more drift to the left. But I
did predict the results within a percentage.
Yes, you did. You nailed it. Yeah. You're right, 11-point gap. But I chose to become a delegate because, frankly, Mandela asked me to, and he gave me a somewhat convincing argument that they really did need to have a change and more of a thorough vision, and that Brian Kennedy, who I've seen do some pretty good things in leadership at the AFT Wisconsin, also I think shows leadership. And I don't know much about Amanda, but I liked the balance, and I've heard great things about her from the Appleton area. I sound like Donald Trump. Great things. I mean, I also heard about Frederick Douglass, but he was not running in the Democratic Party.
Not this time around. Maybe next time.
Doing great things. So, and I thought Lanning is likable.
Yeah.
But I feel like Wisconsin going red in her first presidential election.
Yeah.
A lack of a sense of urgency among area Democrats during that election, and then no candidate. I know it's not a partisan position, but no liberal candidate was selected to run for Supreme Court.
Right.
And the April election, at a time when this resistance was really starting to rise.
Yeah.
And we saw it, right, with the Evers vote.
Tony Evers, who was the more liberal, it's a nonpartisan race, but it was, he's obviously somebody who, leans Democratic or liberal, and he is a huge supporter of public schools and is the opposite of the, DeVos wing of, education policy. So, I think a lot of people that were opposed to Lanning getting another shot were just kind of taking stock of the record and what's been accomplished by the state party the last couple of years, and it's been a lot of failure. And yes, you can chalk up some of it to it being a wave election, Wisconsin being kind of a critical part of that to getting the president elected, but you have to judge people on their results, right? And if that's the approach we're taking, and I think the nail in the coffin for me is the Supreme Court race, which was something that would have been totally winnable if we had put up a candidate.
At least it would have been interesting. We'll never know,
right? Yeah. And it's kind of it's all history now. I mean, there's already a couple candidates for next year, which is a good thing because there's another incumbent Supreme Court candidate.
But those people are following the trend, not getting ahead of it.
Correct.
And that's sometimes the time to win surprising victories is when everybody, I've said this before, when everybody was down about Trump, it wouldn't probably take a rocket scientist to predict a guy like Trump who lost the popular vote might inspire a backlash.
Yeah.
So the time to jump in would be right away if you were going to oppose Trump. And, that's why I think John Ossoff is seen as very competitive. And a lot of legislative races, that's the good news, have gone well for the Democrats in special elections around the country.
We're a few weeks away from that election. That's the 20th, I think we think.
Right.
So that's we'll have more to say on that over the next couple of weeks. But they had a debate last night.
This is Georgia 6, suburbs of Atlanta.
And it's Karen Handel is the Republican candidate, and John Ossoff is Democrat. And they had a debate. They asked a question about living wage, and she was quoted as saying, "I don't believe in the living wage."
Oh, okay. So she believes in poverty.
So, but yeah, I mean, he gave a very well-reasoned argument about why, this needs to be a goal, and that there's a reasonable approach you can take to implementation and working with small businesses to make it work. But that if you're a worker who busts their butt and puts in 40 hours, you shouldn't be living in poverty.
You shouldn't be able, right? You should make enough that you're really not eligible for social services.
Well, yeah. I mean, why should Walmart be able to pay their workers shit and then have them apply for Medicaid and food stamps?
Right.
It doesn't make any sense. Yeah. So they're subsidizing Walmart not paying their workers.
Was that part of his
wage.
argument?
It was not to that level, but it was more high level about this is the approach we need to take.
Do you think it hit people though at a gut level?
I would hope so. I mean, I didn't watch the whole debate. I just saw highlights around this particular question.
It's a well-educated district, so that's good. The turnout's high. The signs look positive.
Yeah.
I just still think the Democrats often tend to under target or target people that they are absolutely confident are their voters and do a little less in the field than they could at trying to expand the map a little bit. And I realize I'm not one of these people that, think we should just go out to Brookfield and knock on every door and hope we find a supporter.
No, you do have to do some targeting.
But you can also, I believe, expand the map dramatically, especially in areas that are lower income with voters for which there's very little data.
Yeah.
Because those oftentimes can be your voters. It's the problem is you won't have them in your voter file frequently. At least accurately placed, you won't have those people.
You got it. But and that's canvassers aren't necessarily going to be the ones that are going to convince those folks. That really needs to start with the candidate laying out a proper argument. I mean, the canvassers can
that's
help.
True. But a constant outreach campaign.
Yes.
In there. And then we actually have seen with some data, at least in Wisconsin, in a few races, where when there's a last ditch, especially since we have same day registration, but a big push or even an early vote push in these areas with lower propensity voters, there's a very concerted push toward mobilization. You can significantly improve turnout, but you can never, in those areas, just solely rely on the voter file because that's not how you're going to find the marginalized voters.
Sure, well, that makes sense. So we'll see what comes out of that. That's like I said, June 20th is what we believe the date is.
None of this is to say that data is bad. It should be used. I mean, it can't be. I mean, first of all, and there can be data about marginalized voters or things that are understood, but you may not have the exact name and person in the right place at all times, and that needs to be understood. So I'm kind of excited about those prospects. I wanted to just bring back one thing about the chair's race, like I said.
Yeah.
And since we've listed as a topic with the straw poll.
Oh, yes.
I mentioned earlier that I thought that there was kind of an urban-rural divide in kind of still kind of like an anti-Mike Tate sentiment that's latent in the party, which I think is kind of too bad. I like Mike, actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think he kind of gets a bad rap. I mean, I don't agree with everything he's said or done, but I think he gets a bad rap.
We're Democrats. We don't.
Right.
Or people that lean Democrat.
Some people act like he's practically the Koch brothers or something. I mean,
that's ridiculous.
It's over the top stuff.
Yeah.
Full disclosure, we both have known Mike personally in the past.
I know Mike going back to college.
But still, no, I think that there's a bias, and so Brian, I know that the Lanning people who were always seen as the antidote to like Tate, Brian Kennedy's campaign was often painted as being tied in closely with Mike Tate. And
why is that? Is it just because? Well, I know Mike's from Whitefish Bay, so is it just because Glendale's next door? What's the reasoning there? I don't quite get it.
Because Lanning was so clearly not part of that, and I mean, and Brian has had more institutional dealings has Mandela with the state Democratic Party.
Okay.
In the past, and the local Democratic Party. So I think that might have been where it was coming from.
Yeah.
But so I actually think that might have been part of what did them in.
Yeah.
I mean,
and we talked about it that there were two other candidates that sucked up some of the vote, but I think even if both of those candidates, the numbers wouldn't have worked out. Even if both those candidates had conceded their delegates,
it would have been 52-48.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe it would have brought, depending on how early on they would have given their delegates over to him. I mean, maybe it would have created some momentum.
Well, perhaps it could have inspired,
yes,
some people.
So, and some people that were maybe on the fence or whatever.
I also think 3 men running and then 1 woman is also a dynamic, which is usually helpful.
Coming off of last year, I would say for sure. I mean, that's a particularly sensitive issue.
I think in the Democratic Party, usually it won't be helpful, and I think that's a good thing. I mean, the Democratic Party strives to be more inclusive. So
I think in most cases, but
and I do think that it's quite possible that Lanning. I've heard from a lot of people I respect that she is a good leader and that she's quite capable, and that whatever mistakes were made were typical learning mistakes, and that the best is yet to come.
Sure. I'm
I certainly hope so, and I'm more than willing to give her the benefit of the doubt.
Oh yeah.
As did Brian today. He gave a very nice Facebook post talking about how he's going to be part of Team Lanning and Team Dem Sweep 2018.
Well, let's hope so. I mean, it sounds at least like we have some candidates lining up for races that maybe they wouldn't have competed in as much in previous years. It sounds we've got a couple candidates for it looks like to run against Paul Ryan.
That's exciting.
And so that's so that'll be good to actually maybe have a competitive
great story
race.
in the Wall Street Journal about Randy Bryce. Did you see
There was
that?
no, I did not read it. No,
it was. This is a real campaign.
Yeah,
it's really exciting.
So yeah, we talked to him a little bit at the convention, and it sounds like he's all in. So that'll be a lot more to come in that race, and
he's who we need. I mean,
you want to give a little background?
He's an iron worker, and I mean, I've called him before to come to things and events, and half the time he'll answer the call. It'll be like, "Hang on, I gotta make sure this beam gets lowered." I mean, he's practically on the job site.
Yeah.
He literally is on the job site.
Yeah.
When he'll usually call you back because he'll make sure that the iron is
that's you got
safely installed.
Right. Well, it's. You gotta give it your all and do high quality work.
Right. We want the Hone Bridge to be stable.
Right.
And then if you're his friend on Facebook, he'll often sometimes when he's working on a particularly scenic site, like for instance the Hone Bridge in the morning, he would always post pictures of the sunrise.
Oh, that's
nice too.
That's
nice touch.
Yeah.
So let's talk about a couple other topics.
Sure. Did we cover that? So that there was the straw poll for governor. We're kind of jumping around the list, but as long as we're talking about state politics, I think it makes sense to bring up that there was a straw poll that WIS Politics ran at
how did that
at the
go
convention. Kathy Weinhaut came out in front.
Right. Okay. By a lot.
Yeah, it was like 38%,
and everybody else was either
like
single digits or
those are like 10 or 12 candidates that they had listed. I mean, obviously not. I mean, we don't really have anybody officially announcing at this point.
Dana Walks looks like a very serious candidate.
Yep, sounds like it.
He's from Eau Claire as well.
They had some others on there that I don't even know if they're going to announce. I think John Erpenbach was he on the list?
Yeah.
So yeah, he was. I mean, he's another one.
So Walks and Weinhaut together combined for 51%. They're both from Eau Claire. So I think that speaks to that anti-Milwaukee Madison sentiment that the top two finishers in the straw poll.
Well, after Tom Barrett losing 2 elections, I think it'll probably be it might be a little while before another Milwaukee candidate gets the nod.
Possibly. I mean, Matt Flynn's running.
Yeah, Matt's running. He's run for Congress before, and so I don't.
He doesn't have a long record of victories to point to.
Yeah, I don't know how that's going to go. I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, and then Andy Gronick is a very wealthy North Shore person who's trying to run a somewhat self-financed.
He had a hospitality suite there, and so he's trying to build some support. But then, in the middle of the weekend, I believe it was Sunday morning, it broke. everybody just had to pause because Paul Soglin, like has been the mayor of Madison for like 100 years, announced that he's not ruling out a run for governor.
Well, yeah, I mean, he and some other candidates, like Bob Harlow, and
who seems like a genuinely
very nice
guy.
fellow.
Yeah,
I'm not sure about his political resume at this point. Mm-hmm. Maybe it'll develop.
We'll see.
But yes, it was an interesting straw poll.
Yeah.
There's another poll I think which is showing somewhat different results, but I haven't seen it yet online.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't either. So I guess we'll have to dig into
there's
that.
a rumor Malin Mitchell may run.
Yeah.
He's
ron
with Barrett and
firefighter out of
right. Interestingly, he received more votes than Barrett in the recall race because it was a separate ballot for governor and lieutenant governor.
That's right.
Or a higher percentage of the vote. I can't remember what it was.
But
2012.
2012,
So he got about 47%. That said, he doesn't really have big name recognition.
Yeah.
But big enough that people are somewhat familiar with him. So he has something to build on.
Yeah.
He's been the president of the Wisconsin Firefighters Union for the better part of the last decade.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the hot stew that is, we called it Putin, Sessions, Trump, Comey, Coates, Graham. What's going on?
The dumpster fire?
Yeah. McCain gets an audience.
I can't even keep track. I mean, I came home. I was at the Brewers game last night, and tonight, I took the kids to the park. I come home, and there's like 3 new headlines.
Yeah.
There was a headline that Jeff Sessions is apparently offered to resign if Trump's unhappy with him. There's Dan Coates, who's director of national intelligence, and there's more news about Trump, asking to be if he can get involved with the investigation and basically try to put an end to it. Stuff. So
Lindsey Graham today said, "Listen to your lawyers." In other words, he said, "Shut the fuck up, Don."
Right. Because he's just building the case for obstruction of justice, essentially.
Yeah.
So it's nuts.
Yeah. Right. I mean, it really is. Putin. We saw he did an interview with Megyn Kelly over the weekend, and I saw part of that.
I didn't watch it. Yeah. How was that? Any real news out of it besides?
Here's what I would say: if they wanted to fire Sean Spicer and get a clear spokesperson for the president, Putin would be a good choice. I mean, honestly,
can you see him up there at the podium taking questions from the New York Times?
Yeah, I mean, no, he gives a better defense of the Trump administration than anyone. I mean, I think it's all kind of platitudes, but. And he's aware of how his words are translated because, it sounds eloquent in translation.
He speaks English, doesn't he? I mean,
so that's probably what it is.
Yeah.
But there's a real awareness of, he chooses his words very carefully. I'm not endorsing Vladimir Putin by any means.
You're not promoting him for the job.
It's clear, they could say that they're not in collusion, but it's clear that Putin is quite happy that the person in the White House is Donald Trump.
Well, of course. He's just building chaos, because as long as the U.S. is in disarray in terms of its alliances and its mission statement, it leaves more room for him to accomplish whatever it is he wants to do.
Did you see that interview with Putin gave when he was in full hockey gear?
I don't remember.
It's after they fired Comey. They literally interviewed Putin.
It was in the tunnel.
A charity hockey game.
Yeah,
the guy's 59 years old, right?
And he probably scored 50 goals or something.
Yeah, the defense didn't look all that.
That's
I don't know if you'd want to check Vladimir Putin.
I don't know.
There might be some consequences.
Is Russia supposed to be good at hockey? I don't know.
I'm just saying that there might be severe penalties for checking Vladimir Putin.
There could be.
On the ice.
You may be disappeared. you may not come out of the locker room.
He may have some advantages on the rink that other players don't have.
Yeah.
He's unstoppable, if you will.
So we got in terms of that overall story, we've got testimony coming from Comey. Jim Comey on Thursday.
Yeah,
in front of the Senate. So
Jim Comey, who threw the election to Hillary Clinton, and then is thrown out of office, or from Hillary Clinton. He threw it to Donald Trump. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And then it gets thrown out of his job by Trump because he refuses to stop investigating Russia, and he wouldn't stop investigating Flynn or whatever. I mean, it's ridiculous. And then, Trump's dropping hints that, really, it was because he wouldn't stop investigating Russia that he fired him. Right. And Trump's worried about who's leaking. He's leaking. He's tweeting. Dude,
apparently he's going to do, play-by-play.
If you don't want leaks, how about you start at the top and get rid of the Twitter account? That got you elected in the first place when they took away your Twitter.
Yeah, no, he's testifying in front of the Senate Intelligence Committee in an open session on Thursday.
It's unbelievable.
And the rumor is, well, it's not really a rumor. They're saying that we fully expect that Trump, if they can't find a way to occupy him for a few hours that day, I'm sure he's not going to be able to hold it in. So there'll be a lot of people that are waiting to see what he says.
So then again, this part of me still thinks this is a big ass distraction because we have the HCA, the Trump Care Act.
But it's important. It has to be put into context.
So the Senate is talking about getting Trump Care out in the next week now.
Yes.
There's a mini boomlet around this.
They're trying to find a way to get people to yes, and
dare people to vote against it.
Well, I think McConnell I don't think he's opposed at this point from what I'm reading in the Hill and other newspapers.
You do know the Senate better than me, so I trust you.
Well, it seems like it's to the point where they have to kind of put up or shut up. So even if they can't get enough committed votes ahead of time, I think they're committed to at least having a vote, because then at that point it's the show them the body strategy, where you have a vote, the thing dies, and then you're basically presenting the corpse to America, saying like, all right, we tried. So rather than having to go back and kind of redo the legislation over and over until you can find something that will pass, it's more just okay, we've been dealing with this for years. Here's the end result, and now it's summer. We got to work on the tax bill. Appropriations are coming up after the August recess. There's an order.
So you don't think he's daring people to vote against it, and calculating that people will at the end of the day choose to vote?
It's tough because it comes back to there are certain people that are going to be they're going to be tough to budge.
When I read comments from Portman and Collins, I thought I was reading movement.
So I would say Susan Collins is going to be the toughest vote to convince. Because I think she's really
Rob Portman is from Ohio would be the other one.
I mean, I think some of those people can be. If you do enough around their concerns, whether it be Medicaid funding, and in Susan Collins' case it's
Murkowski was another one. Yeah.
But I mean, she's from a conservative state. However, healthcare is very expensive in Alaska.
They need the subsidies,
and
right.
they need the Medicaid. And so, but as I say, from the moderate wing, Susan Collins is the toughest vote. From the conservative wing, I say Rand Paul's the toughest vote. And then you still have your Ted Cruz's, your Mike Lee's, but they may vote for something in the end if it accomplishes the goal of scaling things back. Let's say
I'm almost certain they will. Yeah. I mean,
so that gives them to 50. So if the only votes, if they can lose just Collins and Paul, that gives them 50 votes. So then Pence breaks the tie and thing passes. Yeah, then it's got to go back to the House and they got to convince.
So we need Murkowski or Portman or both.
Right. And you're going to need or Mike Lee or Ted Cruz. If it's not conservative enough for those guys.
Well, Lindsey Graham was talking like he was pretty eager to get going. So I mean, I think Lindsey Graham is trying to make another one of his moves by talking a lot lately.
Yeah.
I mean, Lindsey Graham's always trying to elevate his profile, and always sort of seems a little frustrated that it isn't higher. I mean, but that's because he's such a weird weasel.
He is. I mean, he doesn't like Donald Trump very much, obviously, but he's still a conservative. He's not. He's not anything like a liberal Republican.
No, he's not. And he also said that Trump could should cooperate with the investigators because it could clear him, is what he was saying. Although I don't know about that.
Well, we'll
maybe
see.
Whatever. But he talked like he was pro-Trump in the interview. Let's just clear up a couple more things before we roll out of here.
Sure.
We talked about the special election, the straw poll, but we have an election coming up in the United Kingdom, and we also have an event a week from now, less than a week from now.
Yeah.
Where, get ready, drum roll. The President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, is coming to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, to raise money for his good friend Scott Walker.
That's right.
Same Scott Walker that he described as doing a terrible job in having the state. The one time I thought Trump really spoke the truth was in 2015 when Walker got it. He said, "Your state's a nightmare."
Right, and criticized Act 10 and everything like that. I mean,
he talked about wage growth and how wage growth, which is still sticking. It's Walker's biggest vulnerability is there's job growth, but these are crappy jobs.
Yeah.
The labor force participation isn't particularly good, and we're falling behind the standard of living of other states because of the low wages.
Wisconsin, for 2 years in a row, last in startups.
There you go.
So, I thought we were open for business, but,
So I heard a rumor that there may be some demonstrators.
You have?
Yes.
Just a rumor now.
Yeah, just a rumor. And I think some of them are going to start calling him low-wage Walker.
Nice.
So I think it was 1% Walker. I think low-wage Walker is clear.
Okay.
So you'll be hearing that soon.
So the location is to be determined.
To be determined. The time is to be determined. Probably because it's not in Trump's or Walker's interest to tell demonstrators where they'll be.
No, it's like they're going to have to shoot out a text 30 minutes before, and then they're going to scramble to whatever hall they've rented out.
Right. They're probably selling all the tickets, behind closed doors. Eventually, somebody will leak it out.
Yeah, it'll get out in the days leading up. I would expect.
I would hope by Thursday.
Well, speaking of Thursday, we've got the Comey testimony, and then actually it'll be a big news day because we've got Jim Comey testifying in front of the Senate Intelligence Committee, and then that same day, as that's going on,
Theresa May rolled the dice in the UK.
She did. So the Conservative Prime Minister in the United Kingdom. She didn't have to call an election for a few years yet because she had taken over.
I didn't know that they were allowed to call one so quickly.
Yes, there's I don't understand all the
answers.
answers.
There was a minimum of 3 years.
Well, we'd have to.
But maybe it's because there was a change in leadership.
I think that's what it is. Because there was
after
a change.
Brexit, what's his name went down. Mm-hmm. Okay, David Cameron.
Yeah, Cameron left, and then she came in, and so I think she has a window of a few years where she can call the election. So I think, rather than letting the Brexit situation play itself out. She wanted to get a
referendum on her leadership.
Yeah, I mean, she's coming in, as a fresh face for most British voters, and so, why not capitalize on that and try to strengthen your support. Yeah. So we'll see. Since she announced the election, the vote has narrowed. Jeremy Corbyn, who didn't really have a lot of support recently, all of a sudden is like a hero of the left.
Hero. so perhaps a rising sort of anti-Trump sentiment, because people in Europe, especially probably people in Europe, like to do what the Americans aren't doing. Mm-hmm. In particular, they like to, especially when the American president is such an
asshole,
crazy, or so far, right winger. Now's the time to move against that sort of thing. I mean, just like how Tony Blair was punished for working with George W. Bush.
Yeah.
But by the same token, when we had President Obama, we thought Hillary Clinton was going to be elected our president.
Right.
They decided to go for Brexit, which then wound up paving the way.
I have heard. I don't remember if I was talking to you about this. I have heard that polling in the UK has not always been reliable. So
it notoriously is biased toward the more progressive side.
Yeah.
And
so that's
the
my
more
concern.
Right wing reactionary side usually outperforms their polls.
But given just how much it's narrowed, given the events of the last few months,
right? There's a trend.
I think, even if she remains in power, I don't know how many people expect that Corbyn would become prime minister, but I think at the very least it looks like the Tories are going to lose some seats. And they're going to end up doing the opposite of what they intended to do, which is they're going to lose momentum. They're going to lose.
It's not exactly the mandate you were looking for.
No, it's kind of the opposite. I'm sure if she could have read the tea leaves a little bit better, this election would be happening.
538 has an article. My phone's dead and it's being charged. I can't reference it, but it does have an article about what they call the shy Tory factor and how
is it kind of like the shy Trump factor?
Yeah, right. We have it, I think, a little bit too, where polls tend to favor the more liberal candidate a little bit leading up. Maybe because of electronic voting. No, I'm not going. I'm not a black. I'm going to take my tinfoil hat off.
Yeah.
I don't actually believe that. But what I do think is that oftentimes people may feel uncomfortable, even admitting to themselves, perhaps, that they have reactionary positions, but when they get to the voting booth, they decide to go push the button for the reactionary right-wing candidate that is generally less socially acceptable. And the best evidence of that would be the polling error between Clinton and Trump that we just saw, especially in areas like the wild counties, areas with higher education levels, where some people said, Trump would only carry them by 15 points. He ended up carrying them by about 25 points. Yeah. Which is typical for, actually, a little low for a Republican, but not nearly as low as people were forecasting.
Sure.
So you've got that effect in England. That's, I think, a much clearer track record that usually the Tories are underpolled, the Conservatives are underpolled, Labour's a little bit overpolled. So we would expect that Labour's closed the gap from, I think it was a 17-point pro-Tory bias to like a 6 or 7 point gap and narrowing by the minute. In fact, I think they're
like neck and neck
some
right now.
Estimates, right, saying 2 to 4. I think when you factor in the shy Tory factor, it might point to a 7-point Conservatives lead.
Yeah.
But then Silver, I think, pointed out that this bias is less of a factor when there's a conservative government. And it's less of a factor when it's when the conservative government is heavily favored.
Well, and with the whole the Brexit thing is kind of a wild card because that's a new variable, right? So we don't kind of know how that's going to affect things. So, but we're a couple days out, so we'll know, and we'll know shortly. Definitely.
I go Tories by 5.
Man, you put me on the spot.
In the popular vote.
I'm going to say, I think you're not
that
far
may
off,
be
actually.
That can result in close to a hung parliament, though.
Yeah, if they don't get them,
right?
No party gets.
But I don't think Theresa May is going to lose her job as the prime minister.
No,
I think she's going to get a scare.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll be back next week to discuss it.
Yeah, we'll have
all right, mates.
Results.
Okay, let's go get some Newcastle or something like that.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, everybody.
All right, cheers.
We'll be back next time. Forward.